Hello and welcome to the show. Now, for this week's Failrace versus the community was going to be the first on Forza 7. However, there are problems, mostly with the replays. They're crap. We were not only having to run races a lap longer so that the replays don't immediately cut off, they often don't save. Doesn't matter how many people try to save it, they just come up with invalid data. We had a bunch of people trying to save these replays, and most of them do not work. Now, expecting there to be trouble, I did choose to record everything from my perspective, essentially live. So we do have some footage from the first races. Now, for this versus community, we were going to do some proper class racing. Not the homologation stuff, but this is open B class. So anything that it can be run in B class. I had opted to build the BMW M6, a car that I hadn't really driven, and figured I could get a good compromise. A good car in terms of, some decent power and some decent handling. I was starting right down the very back at Mugello here as we feed our way through the opening corners. Up ahead, somebody gets tangled together. I have to take avoiding action, dodging the spinning BRZ. I get myself, though, back onto the road. Lost a little bit of time, but didn't damage the vehicle. Find myself going side by side yet again through these S's. A Porsche 550 on the outside. The Porsche is very quick. Those 550 Spiders are absurdly fast in B class. Knew I was never really likely to fend it off for the entire race as another car gets into a little bit of bother, just about managed to avoid the very sideways right. I don't know if it got tagged or whether he lost it on a curb on his own. Either way, we avoid the very expensive Ferrari, keep ourselves still side by side. There was caution ahead, I don't quite know what. I think somebody did end up, there's a buggy out on the sand. Very easy to do that on your own through there. Still, the Porsche is on my outside as we head through the next corners. I've got to try and give space to that Porsche. The Subaru ends up on the sand trap. I have to have a lift to avoid ending up in the back of the Subaru. That would allow the Porsche past. Ferrari is having a look around the outside, but I'm happy to defend that. As the race progressed, I got myself a little bit boxed in behind a Range Rover and a Ute. Now, my BMW was a very quick car, but it struggled with straight line speed against these two vehicles. Both the Ute and Range Rover very quick in a straight line, as you can imagine. Of course, the PI that they lose when it comes to handling is made up with power and made up with straight line speed, though in trying to find a way past the Ute, it had cost me a position to the Porsche. I then tried to go around the outside, ran out of grip, got stuck, boxed in behind the Porsche, and that allowed a BRZ and Ferrari to go past. It's 3 wide up ahead. Not exactly the easiest of things. Everybody, though, does make it through as I continue to swabble. I spot my opportunity. Again, someone trying to be a little bit brave with the overtakes. In the case of the Ferrari, gets hung out to dry, and I will make the most of that opportunity. I'm then trying to go around the outside of the BRZ because I do just about have the grip to make that sort of pass work as the Range Rover SVR continues to hold this little train up. The Subaru has got just about enough speed, though, to fend off my attack as we're all going to run in a big old train down towards the final corner. It's a bit more of a difficult final corner, this one, to get passes done. It's not the easiest. It's not the biggest braking zone, and you can often get a good run on the outside around there. Nevertheless, my BMW does have a little bit more straight line speed than the BRZ, fairly even in terms of acceleration, but once we get past 130, the Subaru just about runs out of steam. The Ferrari has got a good top-end speed, not quite as good around the corners. He has a look to the outside down in towards this turn 1, but has asked too much. The Ferrari runs out wide. I have to be mindful of that BRZ. As we went on to what would be the final lap, I would find myself catching back up to the Ute. The Range Rover ran out of grip and dropped back. I actually lagged out in the end. My BMW was very quick, and being freed of the battles with the BRZ and the Ferrari and so on, I would chase down the Ute. It was an Oldsmobile and I think a Ford Falcon up ahead, 5th, 6th, but New didn't really have much time to do very much about getting past these vehicles. The Ute would defend, but there is so much grip in the BMW that I got brave. I kind of pinned the Ute down on the inside of the corner, so he couldn't really carry as much corner speed as he would want to, and I knew I had to get far away. I had to make as much ground through just a few corners as I possibly could, otherwise the Ute would simply come blasting past me in a straight. Thankfully for me, the Ute would run wide through that high-speed chicane and would not, of course, be as fast around this final turn. I could make as much speed as possible in the BMW, and while I wouldn't have any time to do anything about the two cars ahead of me, it would be enough to fend off the Ute as we headed down towards the finish line. In all honesty, a few more laps I could quite easily have taken 5th and 6th. The M6 was a brilliant car around Mugello. My fastest lap was set on that final lap while battling cars, was not that far away from the fastest overall. So yeah, the M6 was proving its worth. We moved to Sonoma and, well, some Forza 7 weirdness. For whatever reason, it was another BMW M6 actually, got loaded in as if it was a rolling start and got sent on his way early. Don't ask, because I sure as hell don't know why that was the case. So, yeah, that vehicle kind of ends up out miles ahead. He does lift off to not have gained an advantage, drop himself back into the field. I think gets out of the way on the grass slightly over here. Kind of lifts off the drop back and then gets stuck on the outside and plummets a fair way down the order. A fairly decent start for me in the M6. Unfortunately, an RX-7 would forget that we weren't on the short layout of the track. We were on the kind of normal GP version, and would end up sending me soaring off onto the gravel, and that would leave me with a lot of work to be doing. The RX-7 does wait up for me, so yeah, we both lose a lot of time in all of that. However, that did mean that there were plenty of cars and plenty of overtaking possibilities, and if I was going to be stuck having to do stuff with, well, from my point of view, at least we were going to have plenty of cars to overtake. And boy, did the BMW love overtaking cars. Sonoma was perfect for the M6. A brilliant handling and still quite fast in a straight line vehicle. It would make short work of a lot of the field. This Holden, Sandman and Pontiac Firebird stood no chance against the BMW, getting past the Pontiac. Slightly dodgy hitbox or laggy collision going on between me and the Holden there. I never actually touched it because a big slide. I am forced to have to try and go the long way around said vehicle, but I've got the grip to do it. The Holden is quick in a straight line, but I can run a long way round and get that pass done, and will be clear as we head up towards the braking zone. And while the Holden is going to out-accelerate me, it's not going to be by enough, plus I can hug the inside here to keep that position. Clear of the Holden, I'd make short work of a Mustang. We're then in a little bit of a BMW group. As an M5 ahead of me, ahead of that, an M3. Once more, I can carry so much more speed across the crest of the hill there, get myself up the inside. It's a big curb. You are clonk there. This layout of Sonoma is a little bit easier on the old overtaking front than perhaps the short layout. There are a few more corners you can get passes done. Still not the easiest of tracks, and once again, for the second lap in a row, I find myself having to try and hold the long way around, but the grip in the M6 is phenomenal, as again, similar pass and similar outcome. The M5, again, a little quicker in a straight line, but isn't close enough to do anything about getting past me and being clear of the red M5. We're then on to the E30, much faster around the right-hander, and it's a big dive up into the final hairpin. This, one of the best overtaking spots on the track, and with such a good run through the previous corner, was always looking likely that the M6 would come out on top. I then continued to hound an Aston Martin for a lap. Once we started getting further up, of course, the cars I was racing against got quicker and got more difficult to overtake, but one particular overtaking manoeuvre would become the M6's favourite, and that was a big dive at the final hairpin. The brakes, brilliant, the grip, excellent, and because I could carry so much speed through the very fast right-hander, I was often in position to get passes done, and sure enough, that would see me past the Aston Martin. The Aston again would fight back on the outside into turn 1, but really didn't fancy trying to go around the outside and make that particular pass stick, which is, you know, to be expected. Didn't take long to catch up to the group ahead. Z3 fighting with an Opel Manta, leaves the Opel stuck out wide. I spotted opportunity to try and get the M6 alongside, can't quite get it done as once more. I find myself stuck behind a bit of a slower car heading into the S's, but these corners are so difficult to get passes done. It is possible to overtake through here, but I wasn't really in quite the right position to make it stick on the Opel. So we go back to a trusted favourite of the M6 already. Faster through the right-hander, spot the opportunity up the inside. The Opel can't get across to defend from me as we would put the car past. You've got to make sure that the car on the outside doesn't go for a cutback on you, which sure enough the Opel just doesn't have the grip. None of the cars that I was really racing against here had the grip to quite make it to make sort of cutbacks and so on stick. Now the black and white M6 would run wide, dropped himself back into 5th place and coming under increasing pressure from my car. For once in this race I'd found a vehicle that I was quicker than in a straight line but a little bit slower than around the corners. I had a good run heading into the S's, and this is what I said about you can go side by side, you can make passes stick. Down here it is somewhat scary as the black and white car would try and hold it, can't quite do it. I'll accelerate him down towards the right-hander, but I've got to leave him space on the outside. I know how much grip he's got in that vehicle. Uses a little bit too much, would end up across the grass. I didn't feel the need to defend, but the brakes on that other M6 were very good indeed. He had a huge dive, for which I let him do it. I didn't really want to close the door and have me clonked into the side because I knew I could still get a good run on the exit and I'd have that straight line speed. So it was a cutback from me this time that would get the pass done and able to run clear of the other M6. It was on to the final lap, but it didn't take long for me to catch onto the rear bumper of the Z3, and once again I found myself yet another identical position of trying to find a way past going through the S's. The Z3, again, another car quicker than me in a straight line, but it wasn't by a huge amount, and I was very fast through the corners. So we were heading up towards the favourite of the overtaking spots. Wanted to do exactly the same thing as I'd done before. Z3 actually gets it across the curb and on the grass with a big slide. I'm kind of already committed to taking that inside dive. Couldn't really pull out of that one. Do give the Z3 a little bit of a bump. He gets away with it though, doesn't go far off the track. The other M6 has a huge dive up the inside into the final corner to try and make up a position. He can't hold it. The Z3's got the acceleration. So I would take in the end a 4th place with the Z3 in 5th, the M6 into a lot of BMWs, as I said, in this particular race. Again, lap time wise, I think the M6 I had here was one of the faster cars. It was an MX-5 Cup car that would go on to take a victory. I don't think I was quite as quick as that, but yeah, it was a very, very competitive car. For our final race, we actually had a working replay, which is good news. The only one that would work of the evening. We would head to the Suzuka Full Circuit with the threat of rain. I had set it to be a wet race, but for rain coming later in the race, there was only a percentage chance. It was a 60% chance of rain later in the race, so we didn't know whether there was going to be weather affecting the event or not. Either way, there were a few cars escaping the track through the S's. The Ford that we are following here was very, very quick through the turns, but struggling a little bit more in terms of straight line speed. And Suzuka, there are a couple of very, very long straights, of course, to make the most of the power cars, but then there are also some very, very technical sections. Sierra finds himself stuck on the outside through the Degners with the Camaro, get a little bit connected together through there, although everyone does pop out the other side just about okay. The Ford had tried to go the long way, although he's now got an Aston Martin for company as we run down towards the hairpin for the first time. And this kind of midfield group would be the biggest battle. Certainly the top 3 or 4 would really run away from the rest of the field fairly early on, although it does help when they're all fighting one another, such as this. The BMW had a big slide on the opening lap and dropped back. Was very, very difficult to drive through the corners. You can see it really, really struggling through the turns, but it was incredibly fast in terms of the straight line speed. As soon as you got to any sort of acceleration zone, the BMW would fly away from everything that was around it, but then would be a real handful through the corners. You can see how much the Aston Martin is closed. The Ford is having a look at the inside of the Aston. Looks like it might just about get that position. Even with those cars fighting, they're so much faster through the corners than the BMW, but then we've come to a straight, and that BMW has flown away. Up ahead, Camaro fighting with a Porsche 928 as everybody is making their way through the hairpin at this stage. The sheer speed of the BMW hasn't quite got anywhere to use it though down this part, and these are very high-speed corners in which, if you don't have much grip, can be on the rather scary side of things. The BMW, I think, going sideways through a lot of them. I couldn't quite get the Porsche down there, although on the run up towards 130R it wasn't exactly going to be difficult for the BMW to find a way past, while the Sierra would get the move completed on the Aston Martin in the background. One car that was making its way up through the order, a Abarth, the 695, was, again, good through the turns. Was coming up against a Ford Crown Vic, an odd-sounding Crown Vic, because these can have the quad rotor in them. A very fast Crown Vic down the straights, a real handful through the corners, and the Abarth makes short work going around the outside on the run into the chicane. The Ford really struggling to get the car out of the tightest section. You know, the 695 needs to make up as much ground as he possibly can, because we're now onto that start-finish straight, and the Ford, with all of its noisy straight-line speed, was closing quickly, but not quick enough to do anything into this first corner. You know, the Crown Vic's not going to be able to have a dive on the much better handling car. The mid-pack would stay relatively close together. A few mistakes would drop cars further down the order. I think this was just outside the top 10 that we had these vehicles fighting for position. The Opel Manta, Shelby Omni, Porsche 914, and so on, all running close together for a kind of a lap or two, really. Not a huge amount of overtaking was going on between all of the cars. They would kind of just stay clumped together, setting similar lap times, sort of all within visual range. It is that tantalising distance of you want to be trying to find a way past the car ahead because it is so very close, but you're never quite close enough at the right point. You're never quite able to find a place to make an overtake. And yeah, so the Porsche might get the Crown Vic. It was one of those races for a lot of the mid-pack. As I said, at the front, cars really did start to spread out and pull away as the rain would start to fall. With just one lap to go is when the rain decided to make an appearance. This Sierra bottled up behind the Aston Martin. The Ford very quick through the corners, but kept getting stuck behind cars that struggled through the turns, but were much faster than it down the straights. It made it difficult for the Sierra to try and find a way past, although when an opportunity did arise, the Ford was always going to be able to take it, sneaking up the inside of the Aston Martin. And as the rain starts to fall, you are going to be wanting those grippy cars. I mean, you can see the amount of gap that the Sierra can make through the corners, although a little bit shonky on the exit would give the Aston Martin a chance. The rain would cause chaos on this final lap, with people being severely caught out by this sudden lack of grip because it rained, and it rained damn hard. The Porsche is off, the BMW running very, very wide, the Shelby is going exploring slightly in the background, and Camaro can barely pull the car up in time. It was a lot of suddenly frantic driving with this. The way that I'd set the weather up, it was dry to light rain and then to rain, or to sort of lightning rain. The light rain never happened. The light rain just didn't occur because both of the rains were only a 60% chance. But the rain with thunder did happen as we got to Spoon, and everybody fell off the road because no one was quite sure where the grip was. If you stayed on the track, that was, well, where you made time, funnily enough. For me, I've been running around in second for a large portion of the race, about the only car that was able to keep running with the leader. But a big mistake at 130R had dropped me, well back from the leader and down into that third position behind Meyer's Manx. The Manx, insanely fast, accelerating, didn't have much in the way of top speed, relatively good around the corners. I was closing as we came onto this final lap. I knew I had one opportunity. It was going to be after 130R into that final chicane is where I was planning to make a pass stick. I had the speed in the BMW. In the end, though, it was the Manx that carried too much speed in the pouring rain here, running wide at 130R, that would very much gift me the position. He comes back on as well as some nasty puddles along the edge of the road. Yeah, in the end, relatively straightforward pass for me to move up into the second place. But I have to say, that Manx was surprisingly competitive around here. At the front, though, it was a BMW 1, 2, and M3 that would go on to claim victory. As I said, for a while, me and the M3 very, very similar lap times. M3 quicker down the straights, my M6 better through the corners. Could have been a very interesting battle between the pair of us had I not thrown it off the road at 130R, especially with the rain falling towards the end. I think the M6 might possibly have stood quite the chance. It was, yeah, an interesting race. An interesting versus the community as well. We didn't really know how the open class was going to fare on here, with a lot of stuff still being restricted, annoyingly, to a homologation only. However, it was a lot of fun. It was an awful lot of fun. I would recommend the M6. It was a very strong car at all three of the racetracks. It had plenty of action. Thankfully, for the races in which I had to use live recordings, I'd started down towards the back of the field, so I had plenty of cars to be overtaking, plenty of action on the screen. If I'd been stuck with only my point of view for that final race, it would have been incredibly dull. It would have been a very, very dull race. But that is the way it goes. Yeah, the Forza 7 replays are horribly unreliable at the moment. Hopefully they will get better. Hopefully soon they will get better as well, because it is, yeah, making this sort of stuff rather difficult. However, that is going to be it for this week's Versus Community. The next one, we are going to be staying with Forza 7. We are going to be, or it's going to be on the 19th of October. We are going to be racing C-Class Fiats. Not a Baths, it is Fiat. So the 124, the 8V, the Dino, and the X19, I believe, are the Fiats in the game. So yeah, build them to C-Class. If you want to take part in that event, you can go to our forums. There'll be a link in the description. Find the Failrace versus the community section, and you can sign up in there. However, that is going to be it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.